So Bezrat Hashem, we'll start it today, and don't hesitate to ask any questions during the shiur. Let me just turn off my phone. Okay. There's a pasuk in Shir Hashirim that says, Mayim Rabim lo yuchlu lichbois es ha'ava unaharais lo yishdefuah. Abundant waters, we'll just read the English, it's a good translation. Abundant waters cannot extinguish the love, nor can rivers wash it away. We know that Shir Hashirim is written by Shlomo HaMelech, is a sefer that discusses the love of a man and a woman, but it's really talking about the love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Am Yisrael. We're HaKadosh Baruch Hu's wife, so to speak. In Torah, so a man is a mashpia, and a woman is a makabel. In general, a woman is also mashpia, right? You have a lot of women who even mashpia a lot more than their husbands. But also physically, the man is mashpia, and the woman is makabel, and then the woman develops what the man is mashpia and produces a child. Mashpia and makabel, you know the terms what I'm using? You understand what I'm saying? Yeah?
Sure.
Hebrew? It's okay? Huh?
I'm not embarrassed, no.
Okay, so ask.
Well, no, because you hear the words and they become meaning something. And
Right. A mashpia is one who gives, right?
Yeah, well,
And a makabel receives. So the masculine is giving, and the feminine is receiving.
Okay, but then there's another word for something. Just like that. I'll find it. I'll bring it down.
All right. So the neshama is a part of a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and the neshama is mekabel the kedusha from a Kodesh Baruch Hu. So the neshama is so connected with a Kodesh Baruch Hu that abundant waters cannot extinguish the love, nor can rivers wash it away. So in Shir Hashirim, when Shlomo Melech is saying this pasuk, and he's talking about the neshama. He's talking about the love that every Jew has. He's talking about the love a woman has for her husband, but he's really talking about the love every Jew has for a Kodesh Baruch Hu that's a part and parcel of each and every Jew's neshama. So no matter what happens, that love cannot be extinguished or washed away. We'll see the difference between extinguished and washed away. And that's because the neshama is veritably a part of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. So even if it's covered over, and we see that in certain people that the neshama is covered over, you don't necessarily see that their Jewishness is revealed in their behavior and the way they think, the way they speak. But it doesn't mean that their neshama is not there. It doesn't mean they don't have it. It's just latent. It's just hidden, in the potential, waiting to be brought out by us, right? The Rebbe gave each and every Jew a mission. He said every Jew is a shaliach. You don't have to be in the picture to illuminate the world. Every person according to their ability and the amount that the influence that they have on the amount of people that they have that they can influence to illuminate the world. Of course, it has to be always done in a way of pleasantness, and a way of yamin mekareves, not smol doche. Yamin mekareves means the right hand draws close, the left hand pushes away. The way to illuminate is with a pleasant way. That's what works. It used to be in generations before, you'd pot someone enough and they'd get the message and they'd behave, but that doesn't work in this generation too much, right? People just rebel, they say, "Oh, you don't," yeah. So, right. So the Isa b'drushay Rabbi Seinu Nisienu, and it's brought in the Maamarim of the Rebbeim. The Rebbeim means the Chabad Rebbeim. Shemayim Rabim hem kol tirdois haparnasa. That these abundant waters that Shlomo HaMelech is referring to are the anxiety and preoccupation that's involved in earning parnasa, earning a livelihood. V'hamachshavos shebe'inyonei olam hazeh, and the thoughts concerning matters of this world. Because the pressure of earning a parnasa can overwhelm a person, just like abundant waters, gushing rivers, and he could become so involved with his difficult situation and his financial straits that he could forget that who he is and how he has to behave and how he has to think, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to help him. He just has to make the proper vessels. And it says on Rosh Hashanah, all the bracha is already allotted to us for the entire year. Based on our tefillos, based on our prayers, on Rosh Hashanah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu opens up the vault, the door to the vault, and gives all the bracha to each and every yid. Whatever the yid is going to have for that year is already allotted on Rosh Hashanah. So why do we have to daven each and every day? In order to bring it down. It's allotted, but it remains up above. We have to bring it down. We have to bring it down. And the Chafetz Chaim, who once gave a mashal, he was talking about keeping Shabbos, and he said, "What a ridiculous, hi. What a ridiculous attitude certain people have, that they think that if by working on Shabbos they're going to make that more money." He said it's not true. He said not working on Shabbos will give them more of a bracha. He said, what is the davar domeh? What is it lama davar domeh? What is it compared to? To a person who has a kettle filled with water, right? And he has 6 spouts connected to the kettle, and he opens the spouts. So he thinks if he puts another spout, a 7th spout, he's going to get more water. He's going to get the same amount. He's not going to get any more. It's just going to drain faster. So too, Shlomo Melech is teaching, and we're explaining in the Maamar, that the preoccupations and the anxiety involved with earning a livelihood and the thoughts concerning matters of this world, they cannot extinguish the hidden love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu that every Jew has. Yeah. Next page.
An ATM. Davening is an ATM.
That's
ATM what?
it's a nice way to look at it. Interesting. Hi, Shalom Aleichem. Good morning, how are you?
New copies, the new Maamar.
Beautiful, we found it. We're learning from it already.
Great.
Nice and clear.
That's very good. So you can save the copies, keep them. If you want, you can leave them here. Best to save and bring them with you. So that's how we'll.
I think we should leave them here.
You want to leave them here?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
So
If someone knows that they're gonna chazer over it, people are gonna take it. But
Okay.
if someone's not going to, just leave it here.
Okay. The set I got one.
Thank you for printing them out. One time, the previous Rebbe sent a Jew, one of his shluchim, to see another Jew and go to another place. I don't remember the details of the story, but he came back and he told the previous Rebbe that the Jew, he said he's a Sefer Torah, but there's a few letters that are pasul. The Jew wasn't how he had to be in all ways. So that's how the Chassid described it. There's a few letters that have to be fixed. A Sefer Torah that the letter isn't good. The whole Sefer Torah is not good. So there's a few letters that have to be fixed. The Frierdiker Rebbe scolded this Chassid. He said, no, there's nothing pasul about a Jew. He said it could be that the letter's covered up with some dust, and you have to go to clean it off. But inside each and every Jew is sparkling diamonds. Sparkling diamonds. More than diamonds. You know, the Rebbe used to stand for hours and giving out dollars to every person from all walks of life, observant, non-observant, Ashkenazim, Sephardim, men, women, children. And there's a well-known story of the Rebbe Rashab, that one of his, he showed a lot of affection for plain Jews, simple Jews. And one of his Hasidim said to him, Rebbe, what are you doing? And this chassid was a diamond merchant, and every year he used to give the Rebbe a present. He used to give him a beautiful diamond that the Rebbe would use for tzedakah. So he came to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, let me see your diamonds. So he opened the bag, and the Rebbe looked through and he said, oh, this is a beautiful diamond. This is the best diamond. So the chassid said, you see, it's hard to contradict the Rebbe, right? You have to be careful how you speak. But he said, Rebbe, he said, these diamonds, that's also the diamond you picked is a beautiful diamond. But he said, this diamond is a much better diamond. You should take this diamond. It's much more valuable. So the Rebbe looked at it, he said, I don't see it. I don't see how it's better. So the chassid said, you have to be a maven in diamonds to understand. You have to know. This has to be your field. So the Rebbe said to his chassid, and when it comes to neshamas, you have to be a maven in neshamas to understand. Right? We, the Rebbe, saw the good and the light and the holiness in each and every Jew. And by seeing that, it gave each and every Jew a power to have the self-confidence to realize, yeah, he can really accomplish a lot more than he thinks he's able to accomplish. Yeah, so this is the love that's latent and hidden in the soul of every Jew. Unaharos lo yishtafuha, and rivers can't wash it away. Shegam kasher machshavos haniskarim l'mayla hem mitirdos beyoser ad shein mishutotos b'merutza b'tmidus bli hefsek klal. Even when these thoughts, the preoccupation with earning a livelihood and other worldly matters, are so unsettling, to the extent that they flow so powerfully and consistently without any interruption at all, like rivers that flow incessantly, moving and gushing with a powerful current. Nevertheless, they cannot wash away a Jew's love for God, nor can they extinguish it. Oh. So that is the first section. Any questions before we move on to the next section? Pretty simple, pretty quick, clear. Okay. Ubir dir kalash and tirdur sapanasa. Now the Rebbe is going to explain the precise choice of the term, the anxiety and preoccupation involved in earning a livelihood. Hineksiv yagia kapecha kisoichal. It's written in Tehillim, when you eat of the labor of your hands. So the verse continues, Tov lecha v'na elecha kachamid. It'll be admirable and pleasant for you, right? So we see that one has to work. Let's give him we're on the third page 292 at the top. Thank you. So we see that it's a good thing to work. It says when you eat of the labor of your hands, saying that's a person doesn't want to be on a getting a handout. The Kodesh Baruch Hu created us that we don't like to get handouts. We feel embarrassed by getting handouts. But if a person works and they earn a parnasa and then they are able to support themselves, that's much more of a feeling of goodness than if they can't and they have to rely on handouts. I mean, if someone has to rely on handouts, they rely on handouts. 292. Yeah. And it is well known the labor of your hands means that a person should work with his hands, But no, he shouldn't work with his mind and his heart. The Rebbe teaches us that the hands have to work. The person's external quality should be involved in his work, but his inner quality should be kept sacred for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for Torah and mitzvahs. His love shouldn't be in his work. His love should be for serving Hashem, for loving a fellow Jew.
So if you teach mathematics or English,
So even it says here in the English, if you take a look, this applies even in the present era, when by and large we work with our minds and not only with our hands. Nevertheless, as the Maamar proceeds to explain, the emphasis is on the degree of involvement of one's mind and heart, how much of himself the person invests in his work. So if a person, like you said, is a mathematician, right, or a doctor, or a lawyer, or anything that he has to, most fields today, right, you work in high tech, you have to work with your mind. You can't just, it's not like being a tailor, right, or being a carpenter. I mean, even a tailor and a carpenter has to use their mind, right? They have to think about how they're going to fix it. But you could see by a tailor and a carpenter, it's blue collar work. That's what they say in English. Everyone knows blue collar work, what that means? Mm-hmm. It's work of the hands. It's physical labor. Yeah? While high tech, for example, is, even though you may have to type on a keyboard and you have to do some physical stuff, it's mostly with your mind and your heart. So you still don't invest what you need to invest to fulfill the job properly, but don't make that what defines you. Don't make that what defines you. I was once at a funeral. What?
Horrible.
Yeah.
Amen.
Right. Amen. And the rabbi was speaking about the nifter. What an engineer he was. What an engineer. He worked for a certain company for 50 years. He got a watch. And even after then, he retired. He worked for another company as an engineer. And he was a nice person. He was a father. He was a grandfather. He was a husband. He was a brother. He had a lot of good qualities that had nothing to do with his engineering abilities. But that kind of defined his life. I mean, at least that was how it was in the Rav's eyes. I don't know how it was in the person's eyes, but the person obviously loved his work. And you can love your work. You can enjoy your work. Like if you're working in something that you don't like, I mean, you're not going to want to do a good job. If you're working something you like, you'll do a good job. But like it because it's a means to an end. It's not the end in itself. Right? The means is, the end is that you have to be able to support your family. You have to be able to give tzedakah, right? So the means is I have to do something in order to have the income in order to be able to support my family and give tzedakah. But don't ever turn the means into the end. And that, I once heard in a shiur, I forget who it was from, that they say a lot of times that Rabbanim will call things avodah zarah, when it's not avodah zarah, it's not actually idol worship, right? But they'll call certain activities idol worship when people turn the activity into the end in and of itself, and they forget that it's only a means. It's only the axe that's used to build. It's not the intention of what the axe is. And it's not the axe that builds, it's the wood chopper that builds. Right? Sometimes we give too much importance to the axe, to the means. And that's called avodah zarah b'kalus, like a type of idol worship.
There was a commercial on the Super Bowl. And an American was running around saying, we're Americans, we work 24/7, 7 days a week.
Must have been a beer commercial.
Something, but the Europeans, social media came back with, what's with America? Why is that so, why is that the goal of your life in America?
Yeah, right.
Of course, Europeans is another.
You're European, you're not from South America. Where are you from?
Milano, Italy.
Ah, Italy, Milano. I was never there. I was in Italy,
Where?
but we didn't go to Milano. Tuscania.
Toscana.
Toscana, that Azor, that area. Can't remember the names of the cities we went to, but it was very, very beautiful.
Firenze.
We went to Firenze. I didn't actually, yeah,
Lavrovolsky.
I didn't actually go. My wife, she was pregnant at the time and she didn't feel well that day, so we sat out that trip. We stayed in the hotel, so we missed out Florida. Yeah. So, where are we? Yeah. So a person should labor with their hands and with their mind and heart what they have to, but not more than what they have to. It shouldn't become that shouldn't become what defines their life. V'hainu dehagam asher mitzad zeh shahashpa ba'olam hazeh nimsheches derech levush hateva. Since the divine blessings that are granted in this world are drawn down through the garments of the natural order, right? Therefore, there must be activity on man's part in order to draw the blessings from above, to give them a vessel in which to become enclothed. There has to be a vessel. So we know the story that Eliah, who was it? Which prophet was it that the woman was it was Eliyahu Navi, that the woman was very poor and destitute, and the tax collector was coming
Good vessel of oil.
with the oil. What was you saying with the thumb? It was Eliyahu Navi?
Elisha.
It was Elisha?
I think it was Elisha.
Could be. So what did he say? Who remembers what he said?
Please.
Bring vessels, bring vessels. This drawing down the bracha wasn't a big deal for him. He knew how to draw the bracha, but he needed vessels. So that we have to toil. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us that we have to toil in order to refine and elevate the sparks of holiness that are in the world.
Make ourselves into Caleb.
We have to make ourselves into vessels, certainly. Yes. Good, pure, straight vessels that the bracha can be absorbed and not be diverted to the wrong places, most certainly. Yes. So there has to be activity, a medium, in order to enable the descent of these blessings. Nevertheless, what's the source? Is the source the vessels, or is the source the blessing, the light that comes into the vessels? The source is the light. And we can forget that. Living in this dark, mundane world and seeing the natural order of things and seeing how the Gentiles, like you mentioned, are proud that they work 24/7, and they believe that their koichi v'oitzim yadi asuli et achayil hazeh, which is a pasuk from Chumash, which is an explanation of why. Of the source, one of the main sources of the exile is the attitude of koichi, my power, v'oitzim yadi, and the strength of my hand, asuli et achayil hazeh. That made for me all this wealth. It's very hard for someone it takes an effort on someone's part, someone who's working very hard and seeing that their work is making them a lot of money, to realize it's a bracha that's coming from Hashem. Like, for example, a farmer, he sees the field has nothing on it, nothing is growing from it, and he starts to plow, then he seeds, he plants, and then he reaps, and the rain comes, and Baruch Hashem for rain, right? If it wasn't for rain, he might forget altogether about a Kodesh Baruch Hu, because he can't control the rain. But sometimes he figures out a way even to get around the rain, right? He desalinizes the water and then puts irrigation pumps. He could very easily come to think and say, forget about a Kodesh Baruch Hu's blessing, and really think it's koichi v'yotzim yadi. That's a mistake. That's a mistake.
It's an ishtadlut.
What?
It's an ishtadlut from most parts.
Right, we have to make the hishtadlut, and Hashem gives the bracha. Exactly, correct.
That is that not.
You have to make vessels. That's the hishtadlut, or the making of the vessels. Hishtadlut are the efforts that one has to make. As tzarich liot asiyah shebezeh titlabesh hashefesh shel. So there has to be activity on man's part in order for the blessings from above to become enclosed. It's the medium. U'kumoshe katuv uverachacha Hashem Elokecha b'chol asher ta'aseh. That Hashem will bless you in all that you do. And the emphasis over here, dafka, the Rebbe writes, on that you have to do it. You have to make vessels.
Asher bara Elokim la'asot.
That we have to do. Right, correct. And the Sifri comments, is it possible that a person should sit by idly, expecting his livelihood to be granted to him without any effort on his part? The Torah therefore teaches in all that you do, indicating that our work is required. V'ad shelefamim mitzad godel ha'helem v'ahester tzrichim gam liyigiyah. And as a result of the great concealment, because of the great concealment and hiddenness that's in this world, so sometimes it requires actually intensive labor, not mere work, but strenuous activity, which pushes a person to his limits. And now the commentary here is very good. I didn't read all the commentary, but this commentary here right below what we just read is very good. On the bottom of page 293. When is labor necessary? In a situation where godliness is concealed. In other words, where godliness is revealed, you don't need labor. Yeah, you need to make some effort. There has to be obviously some effort, but you don't have to make strenuous labor. In general, the concealment comes about as a result of man's conduct. Thus, on the verse, Hashem is your shadow, the Baal Shem Tov explains that just as a shadow follows the movement of one's limbs, so too every action that we perform spirals upward to the spiritual realms, generating intense light, or chas v'shalom, the opposite, in those realms. Thus, when a person turns away from godliness, he engenders a spiritual climate where godliness is hidden, and thus a greater energy, a greater garment is required in order to draw that godliness down to the physical plane. In other words, did I skip any pages? Our work, our avoda down here has an effect above, and it creates a climate above, and that climate above affects how it is going to be down here.
Is this referring to both individuals, small groups, and large groups?
In terms of what?
Well, you could imagine one individual in a certain community not creating enough of the positive energy so that he has to work much harder. But could it also, the same thing will be also true with a small community of Jews in a certain place, or a larger community of Jews in a larger place?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's true for each individual.
But is it true for groups of people?
It's first of all true for each individual, also in the positive manner, right? That a person, by recognizing that the blessing comes from Hashem and making the proper amount of efforts and proper investment of his mind and heart in the work he has to do, but not more than that.
Right.
Creating proper vessels, clean vessels, straight vessels, large vessels that can contain bracha.
Right.
And we know that as far as groups go, every Jew is responsible one for the other. We're all arivim,
I'm
zelazeh.
talking about single people, though, one for the other. I understand that positive and negative, the person is individual, but I'm asking, does it apply to a group of Jews as well?
What do you mean, like a group of Jews working together on a project?
or living together, or davening together in the same shul, or living in a
Sure, yeah.
community.
Yeah, there's much more power in a group. There's much more power in a good way and in a bad way. Also, with an individual who lives the right way and goes along the right path, he creates bracha. He draws down bracha below. And if I do it, it doesn't just draw down bracha to me, it draws down bracha to every Jew, because every Jew is connected. And also in a negative way. The mashal is given, a person is on a boat, right? And another person is on the boat and he sees him, this mashal, right? He sees him drilling a hole under his seat. And the guy goes over to him and he says, "Stop that. Why are you doing that?" He says, "Well, don't bother me. I paid for this seat. This is my seat. I can do whatever I want. You do what you want in your seat." But obviously that's very foolish, because the whole boat is going to get filled with water. We're all responsible, one for the other. And group effort has much more power than individual effort. But each individual has to do what he can do. Also in regarding trying to help others, see the right way and go on the right path to help illuminate their path. Yeah, and also it says, the note continues in that vein. We're at the top of page 294. In that vein, it must be noted that the decree that you should live by the sweat of your brow, which is labor and exertion, by the sweat of your brow shall you eat bread. When was that issued? When did that decree come about? Only after the sin of Adam HaRishon. Nevertheless, mikol makom, ein tzarich litasek b'asiyah zu, ki im rak et kochot hachitzoniyim shelo, yegia kapecha bekapayim v'shari evarim hachitzoniyim. Nevertheless, even when labor is necessary, like in our world, only one's external energy should be invested in this activity. It should be, as the verse states, only the labor of your hands and one's other external limbs. Avalo et hakochot hapnimiyim v'hane'alamim shebemoyach v'belev. But it should not involve the inner and more elevated powers in the mind and heart. Ki koiches elu tzrichim liyos mukdashim l'shameshet kono. For these inner powers of the mind and the heart, they should be set apart for serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shezehu Tachlis Briyasa, and that is the purpose of his creation.
If you are prime minister, or a colony minister, it's different.
What'd you say?
If you are a minister in the government,
Yes.
it's different.
How so?
Your purpose is to do the good for your followers. You have to work with your brain, not with your hands. And it is it's most important effort. He hasn't got time for.
You want to tell that to the MKs?
Every occupation requires a certain element of putting your brain and heart into the occupation.
Yes.
But even a person who has a very simple occupation, right? So, what occupation should we pick?
A lawyer.
That's not a simple occupation. But
Okay.
a gardener. A gardener. Even a person who has a simple occupation, a gardener, a person who works with the field, right? He has to put his mind into it. And when he puts his mind into it,
I mean, I'm speaking about the gardener.
one sec. When he puts his mind into it, so his mind also should be focused on not just me, not just what's the best for me, what's the best for the environment, what's the best for my neighbor too. I don't want to do things that are going to harm him, right? I want to look out for him too. And a person who works in a more of a field that requires more of his mind and his heart, and like you say, someone who works on behalf of the public, certainly his mind and heart should be involved in what can I do best for the public.
85% of his life, 90%.
Certainly it should be, and he shouldn't be corrupt, and he shouldn't be have for self-interest. Yeah, he has a different struggle.
It's not what he said here.
Again, you're going back to the question when it says that you should eat of the fruit of your labor, the labor of your hands, right? So therefore, you're saying, how can we even work in any field that requires our mind and heart's occupation? So we already explained that earlier, that you're allowed to put your mind and heart into it, but don't put your mind and heart into it more than it needs to be put into it.
If we speak of it, to feel one's identity is different. But the work and identity are two different things. It doesn't speak about identity, it speaks about work.
Right. But you brought up someone who's working on behalf of the public.
There are many different.
But it's a very good example, right? I mean, the Rebbe, look how much the Rebbe put himself into Am Yisrael. He put his entire self into Am Yisrael. He slept, 3-4 hours a night?
Also went to engineering school.
Also went to, right.
He did.
Right. Yeah. I mean, each person, look, a person needs to understand that if they're working to the point where their entire focus is on the vessels, and they don't have time to daven like a mensch, they don't have time to spend time with their family like a mensch, they don't have time to learn Torah like a mensch, they don't have time to learn Torah. They're overdoing it. They're overdoing it because that is the ikar. That is the main thing. That is the end. The end is to serve a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And if you're working so much that you don't have time to daven, you don't have time to learn at all, because you're always involved in you're doing too much. So also these ministers, these people in politics, right? If you have someone who's really a true person who's really caring about Am Yisrael, like a king, like someone like the Rebbe, right? So, I mean, obviously the Rebbe is, you don't have to question the Rebbe, but people that are not the Rebbe that are working in positions like that, they also have to know where it's time to, they made their efforts, and now they have to let things.
I really don't see the difference of the farmer who is putting all his mind in the work of he's doing, and the engineer and the prime minister. It's a matter of identity, what you feel you are. It's not a matter of what you work with.
The difference is that the farmer, or let's take a shepherd, because
shepherd is different. That's why there were the shepherds and there were those going.
But even a part of the farmer's job is to weed. He has to go around and he has to bend over and he has to pull out weeds. He could say Tehillim while he's doing that, right? If he knows Tehillim by heart. He could learn Mishnayos while he's doing that. Yeah. It doesn't occupy his mind so much. He sees the weed, he pulls it out. How complex is that?
In the past, when you were 7, 8 years old, you were working in the fields. You didn't have time to go learning, even in Poland.
But let's say someone knows Torah and they know Tehillim by heart, and they can say Torah and they can think Torah.
If he doesn't?
Let's say someone does. So let someone learn. Let have some Torah. It says every person should have some Torah to think about when they're walking on the street, that their mind should be occupied with Torah. Every person should have something that they should think about to keep their minds occupied, right? Not just Talmidei Chachamim, every single Jew. But in an occupation where a person is, let's say, a defense lawyer, right? So obviously, when his client is on trial and he's got to try to defend his client from not going to prison, he can't be thinking about Mishnayos at the time when he's thinking about the arguments to make to defend his client, right? Obviously. So he has to involve much more of his mind and his heart in his occupation than a farmer. But he too has to try as much as he can to put a limit to the involvement of his mind and his heart in his occupation. And he should just the external parts of his mind and his heart, he should involve in his occupation, but the internal, his real love and his real desire should be for Torah and mitzvahs. Like David HaMelech said, shifty, what? Echad sha'alti, one thing I asked, Echad sha'alti, davar echad ani avakesh, shifti beis Hashem kol yemei chayai. He was busy fighting wars, he was busy being the king, he was busy. He didn't have time to learn Torah, but that was where his heart was. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows where a person's heart is. And you know how you can see it?
So there is one difference is if he's working with the hands or with his mind, because he had the time to write the psalms, and he was working with his mind. He wasn't working with his hands, David HaMelech.
He fought battles.
He didn't fight. He sent the people to fight.
Yeah, at a certain point, he didn't
So
fight.
I just don't understand the focus on the work.
Well, if you read the next sentence, it says should not involve the inner and more elevated part.
This is different.
So, okay, so maybe hands just means what you want to do.
Hands are an expression of the external aspect of the person.
Okay. But it seemed that he was speaking of mamash, work with your hands.
Well, if a person, every person will decide in their life what kind of work they're going to do. You don't have to work. You don't have to be a farmer or a shepherd or a carpenter. You could work in a field that requires your mind too.
But the shepherd had always preferred the farmers in our tradition.
Right? Why? Because their minds and hearts were free to serve Hashem even during their work. That's why. That's why. And you can tell where a person's at, right? When he comes home from a hard day and now he has some free time. What is he going to do with his free time? Is he going to open a sefer?
Yeah, football.
Is he gonna listen to a shiur, right? Or is football? Okay.
Or both.
Okay, but one comes at the expense of the other. Yeah. I'm not judging. I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not judging.
Blessed
Yeah.
was going in pub playing chess.
Why?
Ask him.
I don't know. Okay, you're mechadesh me that. I didn't know. I believe you. But
He was going in pub playing even with goyim, not with Jews. Chess.
all right. So what are ask a Breslover? Why? You don't have to ask him.
Mikol melamdai iskalti.
So he learned from all his teachers. He learned, and therefore
You can learn from everybody. You can learn from a dog.
What's the lesson we should learn from that story? But what's the lesson we should learn from that story you just told us about Rav Nachman Breslov? He was a tzaddik.
Then the work of your mind is as important, if not more, than the work of your hands.
It's more important. That's what the Mayim is saying.
Yeah.
The work of your mind and heart should be set aside to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's where your true love should be, and that's the true love of a Jew's soul, to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that can be expressed by helping another Jew by giving tzedakah, and it can be expressed. There are certain people that that's what they do. They work with their hands and they deliver food for others. That's their heart and their hands are in total synchronization. But sometimes the heart and the hands are not in synchronization. Right? When the person has to figure out how to correct the bug in the algorithm, he's got to use his mind. Right? It's not in synchronization with serving Hashem. It's a means to serving Hashem. But even then, it should be his external energies as much as possible.
In defense of farmers, it's pretty analytical and scientific, and you go sit down with a farmer and they're doing spreadsheets and everything. That's out the ones.
Okay.
The
good.
actual guy in the field.
There's the opposite. You have many occupations and professions where the work is routine, but it's dangerous, and you have to pay attention
Right.
to what you're doing. You're going to be full. You have to see somebody work a drop press, this big machine that comes down and bends metal. And it's routine work, it's not creative work, it puts a feeling, but if you daydream for a second and think about something else for a second, you might have a problem.
Right. Well, yeah,
There are a lot of jobs like that, lots and lots.
sure.
You have to pay close attention to routine work.
Right.
On the other hand, some of the work that I've done, like unloading trucks, the brain isn't even involved in them. You take the box and you put it over there and you get that, and that you could.
Right. Okay. So we're not saying over here that you shouldn't do your work in the best possible way. We're not saying that. You should do your work in the best possible way. You should do it as excellent as you can. Right? But don't forget that you're not your work. Your work doesn't define you. Don't put your inner love into your work. You might have to put some love into your work in order to get it done properly, right? Especially if someone, let's say, is an interior designer, right? They want it to come out beautiful, the house. They have to put some of their heart into their work. But don't put the depths of your heart into that. Depths of your heart, save for serving your Creator.
You stumble upon the history of the Catholic Church, because like you say, even if you're not saying to heal them in the fields, you're in nature and you're thinking of God doing this and making things. When it turned into a commercial society, it became, go to the priest, give him 20, 12 bucks, get me into heaven. I got a lot of work to do.
Right. Yeah. That's Christianity doesn't require much effort, right? It requires just a certain belief, right? As far as I understand it. Okay, but we're Jews. No. You gotta do it yourself. You gotta do the work yourself. Each one of us has to do the work himself. Yeah, but it should not involve the inner and more elevated powers, for these powers have to be dedicated to the service of his Creator, because that is the purpose of his creation.
So whose Maamar is this?
The Rebbe's Maamar.
Mendel?
Ken. We might have already. Okay, let's just say it again. I'm not sure if I skipped the page or not. Anyone know?
I don't think so.
Okay. והגם שמכיוון שהשפע מתעלם ומסתתר בלבושי הטבע, צריך להשתמש גם בשכלו לצורך העסק. True, since there are times when God's blessing is concealed and hidden in the garments of nature, one must use his mind for the sake of his business endeavors. However, hu rak masha mukhrach lahasiya, but he should only invest his mind in only what's necessary to accomplish the task. Avalo ba'ofen diyagia v'hischakmus v'tachbulois ubeprat shebirchas avayahu tashir. He should only involve his mind in only what's necessary to accomplish the task, but he should not labor in a manner where he becomes overly invested intellectually and emotionally, seeking involved strategies, in particular since it is the blessing of Hashem that brings wealth.
You asked the question, a good question, and now it's getting in.
Okay.
It says use your mind for the truth instead of endeavor.
Sure.
Okay.
But don't become overly invested.
Yeah, but the point is not this. What is the difference between hands and brain? I cannot. It's written you should study the stars. You should study geography, biology.
It's written you should study the stars in biology.
Yes.
Where's that written? Like it's a commandment.
It's not a commandment. It's an advice. In order to understand Masim Hashem,
Yes.
you have to study biology. Otherwise, how could you say what is kosher, what is not kosher?
Our Chachamim didn't study biology, and they had
Yes.
we had a
There
Masorah.
are no 70 languages to be part of the Sanhedrin.
Okay. So
It's not your hands, it's your brain.
Okay, so you're right. If a person is going to be a member of the Sanhedrin, his mind is constantly involved in Torah.
This applies to all of our life. Because you should start astronomy, not astrology, astronomy. It's a duty to study astronomy. Otherwise, how can you know now when it's Rosh Chodesh?
Yeah, to know there's Mayim. Because Mayim is based on astronomy.
You can also learn it all from Torah.
No.
You're missing it.
Astronomy you cannot learn from Torah.
And
And it is written that Goyim, Yesh Chokhmah. Okay, so you should study the Chokhmah.
Did you ever learn the Rambam's laws of Chidush HaChodesh, of renewing the new moon?
No, I read them, I didn't learn them.
You read them.
But you read.
So the Rambam writes over there that these were he got a lot of it from the Chachmei Yavan.
Oh,
He got it from the Chachmei. Yesh Chachmei B'Goyim.
so
And
this is good work of your
okay,
mind,
but
not of
you
your
know,
mind.
not everyone is able to understand the mathematics.
And not everybody is able to be a farmer.
What is the point you want to make? It feels like we're arguing, but I don't know what we're arguing about.
I disagree of the difference between handwork and manwork. Everybody, according to his understanding, according to his intelligence, according to his, how do you say? Strength. All these things, everybody's different. So how
Right.
can you say you must prefer handwork to intellectual work?
Okay,
I cannot
so
understand.
let's refine what we're saying. We're not saying you have to work in handwork and blue collar work. We're saying that if you're working in a profession, in an occupation that requires you to invest your mind and your heart, you should invest your mind and your heart, but only up to the point that you need to accomplish the task properly, and not more than that. Your innermost recesses of your mind and heart should be for contemplating godliness and Torah and for loving Hashem and another Jew. That's what we're saying. And that applies to the farmer and to the shepherd and to the engineer and to the scientist.
But it's not what he said here. He said differently.
No, that's what it says.
Okay.
It says right now. Even if you're involved, here, go back to the bottom of page 294. Since there are times when God's blessing is concealed and hidden in the garment of nature, one must use his mind for the sake of his business
Which
endeavors.
is now.
Right, now.
So, if it is now, you put your koyachas in your work, in your philosophy, in your study.
Right, right, yes.
Because we are in a period of,
Okay, but the Rebbe continues and says, but you have to put in only what's necessary to accomplish the task. He need not, however, labor in a manner where he becomes overly invested intellectually and emotionally. Seeking involved strategies. Since it's Hashem's blessing that brings wealth. One's business is no more than a garment for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's blessings. Not that one's business is the source of his livelihood, chas v'shalom. It is apparent that just when wearing clothes in a literal sense, one who puts on too many garments does not facilitate anything. On the contrary, he causes greater harm. Like a child who puts on his father's pants and trips over them. Over-involvement in one's business activities is counterproductive. True, one must invest himself in his financial ventures, but how much? Only as much as the Torah dictates. Anything more will not only fail to improve his earning capacity, it will detract from it. So each person has to know how much they have to put into their occupation of their mind and their heart. And I would say that a good type of measuring stick is to see, does he still have time to learn Torah? Does he still have time to daven properly? Does he have time to spend with his family? And if not, he should perhaps consider that he's putting in way too much of his mind and heart into his occupation. Again, this is a general statement. Each person, each individual with his particular situation, has to either know and figure it out by himself, or if not, to ask a shayla, to speak with a rav, to discuss it with someone. Right? I mean, Chazal say that someone who doesn't have time to learn Torah must speak lo perek echad baboker v'perek echad balayla. He has to learn a few minutes, 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night is enough if he really doesn't have time. But there's a lot of people that do have time, and for those people, learning the 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the night is not enough.
What you have just said, I appreciate, but it's not written so far.
All right, I think we clarified what was concerning you, right?
You should take this home and come back. Take it home.
Okay.
Did you mean hands? Literal sense, or is that a word for labor? Is that a metaphor for
We see that the sons of Yaakov were all shepherds, right? And that was their occupation. And the reason they wanted to be shepherds is they wanted to be able to divest themselves from this world and be able to be occupied completely with serving HaKadosh Baruch.
Yosef was studying economy for.
But Yosef
for
was
20
different.
years.
I was about to say that other than Yosef, who went down and was sold as a slave, and he became the king of Mitzrayim, the viceroy of Mitzrayim. So that was a different path. But that nevertheless, Yosef continued to learn.
Whatever.
He continued to review his Torah studies, and when he first communicated with his father after 22 years, he sent messages to his father. He sent Agalot to remind his father that the last thing that they had learned together was the Eglah Rufa, and he sent also. He told his brothers, tell our father, Sha'ani Moshel, Samani Elokim Moshel, B'chol Eretz Mitzrayim, that I haven't forgotten the Torah of my upbringing, and he remained to be a tzaddik even in that situation. So what's better for each person? That's not for me to say. Each person kind of falls in by hashkacha pratis to what they fall into in terms of their occupation, or they make their choices because they're very, very smart when they're young and they know exactly, they have a plan. But a lot of people don't. They don't know what they're going to do, and they think they're going to do one thing and even study one thing, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu turns out that they go into something else completely. But whatever they go into, they have to remember that it's a means to an end, and it's not the end in itself. Bezrat Hashem, next week we'll continue the Maimer. So it's good to see you all.
You?
Have a good week.
We're going on with this.